$1 billion. Gone. Just like that, in a single night. And get this, there were zero hackers, no super spies rappelling down elevator shafts, no high-tech safe-cracking, just some trucks and a handwritten note. Seriously, this isn't some crazy Hollywood movie script. This actually happened. And the mastermind pulling the strings? The son of one of the most feared dictators in modern history. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to break down one of the most insane real-life operations ever pulled off. Okay, let's dive right into this. $1 billion. It's a number so ridiculously huge, it's kind of hard to even wrap your head around, right? Especially when we're talking about physical, cold, hard cash. This massive fortune literally vanished into thin air, and they didn't even trip a single alarm. The sheer audacity of moving a 10-figure sum overnight is just mind-blowing. Which naturally brings us to the ultimate question. Seriously? Where do you even hide $1 billion? Well, stick around, because by the end of this explainer, I'm going to reveal the exact crazy hiding spot investigators eventually found. It isn't something you would absolutely never guess. It's got to be one of the wildest hiding spots in robbery history. But to understand how it even got there, we got to go back to a ticking clock. Okay, picture this. It's March 2003. The United States is literally hours away from launching a full-scale invasion of Iraq. The entire world is just holding its breath. Tanks are lining up at the borders, the military machine is in full motion, and the tension is off the charts. Meanwhile, in Baghdad, one man knows his 24-year grip on power is coming to a violently abrupt end. Saddam Hussein is just watching the clock run out. So what exactly does a dictator do in his final hours? Well, he doesn't panic, and he doesn't just run. Instead, he pulls out a pen and writes a handwritten note directly to his own son, Qusay Hussein. The order is simple, chilling, and totally absolute. Empty the central bank of Iraq, tonight. I mean, just imagine being handed that piece of paper. The fate of a nation's wealth completely transferred with a few strokes of ink in the dead of night. Now, you'd probably think a $1 billion heist involves, cutting lasers or blowing off vault doors, but there was absolutely no forced entry here, no alarms to disable. When you're the dictator's son operating under the absolute authority of a regime known for brutality, you don't really need to break in. The terrified governor of the central bank simply met them at the door, hands shaking, and just handed over the keys. Just pure fear. Let's actually break down the logistics of this, because it's exhausting just thinking about it. Getting the keys was easy, but the rest? That's the grueling part. We're talking about nearly $1 billion in US $100 bills. Do you have any idea how heavy that is? Workers had to load pallet after pallet, these massive sealed boxes of cash, directly onto trucks by hand, forklifts removing giant crates in a frantic loop. This wasn't some quick grab and go. It literally took hours of back-breaking, continuous manual labor to physically move that much paper. Let's see how this all builds up, because that intense manual labor created a super tight timeline. At T-minus 24 hours, the note is signed. By T-minus 20 hours, Qusay actually arrives at the bank. It takes them the next 8 hours to continuously load all that cash. And then at 0 hour, as the literal bombs start falling and anti-aircraft fire completely lights up the Baghdad skyline, this massive convoy of trucks hits the gas. They just vanished, right into the smoke, the dust, and the utter chaos of a full-scale invasion. Fast forward just a few weeks later, Baghdad falls. Saddam's government completely collapses, virtually overnight. The statues are toppled and the regime is officially over. But as the dust finally starts to settle, a massive realization hits the coalition forces and the newly forming authorities. The vaults are totally empty. The money is just missing. And that kicked off one of the most intense, high-stakes treasure hunts in modern history. U.S. forces and financial investigators immediately got to work. And I don't just mean looking at boring bank ledgers. I mean, they started physically, literally digging. They were combing through these opulent, abandoned palaces, shining flashlights into the darkest corners of a fallen empire. The tension was just palpable. Every single false wall, every hidden basement, every stretch of desert near a regime compound suddenly became a massive crime scene. And then they found it. Remember that wild hiding spot I promised you? Well, investigators literally took sledgehammers to the plaster walls of these lavish palaces. As the walls cracked open, dust poured out, revealing these tightly packed, glowing bricks of $100 bills hidden right inside the architecture. It was literally like something straight out of a cartel thriller. Other stashes were found buried deep underground, totally encased in sealed metal containers to protect the paper from the elements. But here's where it gets really crazy, and this brilliantly illustrates the chilling reality of the whole operation. Even after finding literal walls stuffed with millions in cash, it was just a drop in the bucket. The vast majority of that billion-dollar convoy had simply evaporated, and hundreds of millions are still missing today. Even with investigators tearing palaces apart, the hunt came up completely short on the true bulk of the fortune. So, where on earth did the rest of it go? Well, according to the financial investigators who worked the case, the leading theory is that loyalists close to the fallen regime took this vast fortune to basically ensure their own survival. They theorized the cash was used to bankroll escapes, pay massive bribes to slip across international borders, and, perhaps most significantly, finance an insurgency that violently fought U.S. forces for years. When you pull back and really look at the bigger picture, the scale of the loss is just massive. In the final hours of his reign, $1 billion belonging to the Iraqi central bank was just siphoned off. Investigators point out that instead of being used to rebuild the nation, those funds were potentially diverted to finance years and years of ensuing conflict. It's just tragic. Officially, this remains one of the largest unsolved cash heists in world history. The whereabouts of hundreds of millions of those dollars will probably remain a ghost story forever. But it leaves us with one fascinating, really provocative question. If you had $1 billion in physical cash and exactly 24 hours before your entire world came crashing down, what would you have done with it? Let me know your escape plan in the comments, because I read every single one. Thanks for diving into this explainer with me, and I'll see you on the next one.